once again there, and welcome to a brand new episode of On VJ's playlist. Today, I'm extremely happy because I know I keep saying this quite a lot in my introductions that I'm very happy and ecstatic and excited every time I speak to a new artist. But today, it's all the more because I am speaking to one half of one of my favorite acts from the independent music scene, Nishchay Parekh of Parekh and Singh. A warm welcome to you, and thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. How are you?
Thank you for having me. I'm very well and I'm happy to be here.
Nishai, of course, we are here to talk about your latest album, The Night is Clear. Firstly, what an album. I mean, this album truly establishes the Parekh and Singh supremacy all over it. Um, each and every track is so dreamy, and it's an absolute testament to why Parekh and Singh invest so much time and effort in releasing some of their best works. I think in your 6 year journey since you all began in 2016, it's only been about releasing good music in a day and age where there's a constant pressure on a lot of artists to constantly keep releasing. You're very much not running the race in that way. Is that a fair assumption?
Yes, I think that is a fair assumption. You're right in saying that we do take a lot of time to make our music in comparison to, I guess, a lot of our peers, not only in India but other parts of the world as well, I think. Um, yeah, I think either we're just very slow at what we do because we like to revise and edit, a lot of our work as we go. So our work will normally go through like maybe sometimes even hundreds of different versions before, we're happy with a song or we're believing in it at that point in time. Um, so yeah, it's difficult for us to stay on trend, I guess, and that's why we kind of have create this music which somehow doesn't necessarily fit into uh, I guess what's easy to sell or easy to contextualize in terms of social media or just the music industry.
So let's speak about this beautiful album that you have just put out there for everybody to listen to. The Night is Clear. When both of you were working on it, of course, it's been a while since you have last released the music. I think your last release was in 2019, where, just about before the pandemic. So let's just quickly cut through the process of The Night is Clear. How did both of you manage to exchange ideas, exchange processes while dealing with the pandemic at large?
Jivraj and I actually, even before the pandemic, we've both worked remotely in a sense because we do share a lot of our, ideas and our process does take place via the internet by and large, in the sense that we work like, in isolation to begin with. So I'll come up with my parts, or even if it's a sketch of an idea, and that's usually how it starts. And then I'll email it or share it with Jivraj, through all the various avenues that we have available now. Um, and he'll like put something on top of it. So we kind of build that, and we've always built like that from even before, the pandemic or anything like that. So it didn't really affect our process so much, the pandemic itself. I moved to another city. Like I used to live in Calcutta, and I moved to Dubai in 2018.
Hmm.
So that was kind of
Okay.
around the same time. Um, and yeah, I would say that if anything, we probably got more efficient and productive through the pandemic because we were just, I don't know if we had more time or we just had more desire to just create without, because we didn't know when, the music would come out. We didn't know when we would tour. So we could just create for the sake of it. Yeah.
So like a lot of acts out there, whether they are duos or whether they are bands, Nishchay, I think so much of their process depends upon physical proximity. That they all like to be together in that moment when they are making something together. So how does isolation help both of you? I'm kind of delving into this a little further, but it
Yeah.
kind of amuses me that how as a duo. Uh,
Mm.
how does this back and forth? I mean, there's a challenge over there also. Sometimes being on the same space with each other, on the
Yeah.
same wavelength. it can be a lot reliant on technology. It can be a lot reliant on the time zones. Of course, there's not a very considerable, huge difference between Dubai and Calcutta. But
Yeah.
still, how do you both manage to exchange the synergies?
Um, yeah, I think that's a good point. Because a lot of music does happen with that, personal interactivity,
Yeah,
when you're musicians in a room, which are feeding off of each other. I guess with me and Jivraj, we've always kind of been the kind of musicians that prefer sort of composition, and like production in that sense. So there hasn't been a lot of instances where me and him are just in a room just like making sounds or just sort of jamming, quote unquote. I don't even think we're very good at that, to be honest.
yeah,
There are some musicians who obviously have that sort of ability to improvise very easily. But the kind of music that we like and love, I think, is always very sort of composed and thought out music. So for us, the thinking always has come first in terms of the music. So there's been few instances, even from the beginning of when we started. We would always like work within the framework of a song. So like I would go and say, okay, this is what we're going to work on, or he'd say, let's rehearse this song specifically. So there wasn't a lot of room to for that. Of course, when we rehearse, there are things which come out and we develop things, but the starting point is always the composition. So I think that idea and philosophy is easy to translate when you're sharing ideas over the internet, or sort of working remotely, because everyone is working from the same framework and you're working in the same sort of sandbox, as so to say. So I think that basic philosophy just allows us to be um, quite interactive over the internet as well, or just remotely working. And yeah, in fact, there's now, since we're living in different cities, also there's even less sort of personal interaction in terms of playing together a
yeah.
lot. Only, of course, when we do our shows and when we have rehearsal schedules, then we like go in and fine tune all the music that we're gonna be performing.
Hmm.
Um, but aside from that, I think we're very much a compositional project. We're very much, both of us, like approach it as a songwriting project more than uh, you know flexing our musical muscles and like improvising and being in the moment and all that sort of stuff.
But do you think that's also largely because, Nishchay, both of you have known each other so well? I mean, you all started out there you all started out as these really young boys from La Martiniere in Kolkata. You all have known each other, since that day and age, and
Yeah,
you all have really grown and seen each other evolve over the years. I think it's been a friendship of more than a decade. I'm sure
yeah,
it may be more than that, but
yeah.
I think that largely translates into the faith and belief that both of you have in each other, which is why I
Mm.
think y'all don't really need to be physically there with each other also while making music. Is that a fair assumption?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I think both me and Jivraj, you, faith is the right word. I think we're very sure of each other's like strengths and weaknesses. We're very aware of what the other person can bring. So we know, when I send something to him or he sends something to me, we already kind of know what that the other is going to come up with something which is interesting and which is going to be creatively fulfilling. So yeah, there is a we have since we've spent a lot of time also just being friends, aside from just playing music. So I think that's definitely helpful when you have a real personal connection with somebody that you're in a creative project with.
I mean, let's look at your amazing journey as a duo. Nishchay, from the time you all began with Ocean in 2016, and it's been such a momentous journey since then because, I mean, 2016 was still the year when I can say that independent music was still at a very, very infant stage. The discoverability was still not as large as it is now, where, just a cover on Instagram today, and, suddenly the artist, has become overnight visible to so many people. But when you all were starting out in 2016, Do you remember a brief conversation or a brief moment where, the heebie-jeebies were at large? There was so much of uncertainty, and there was, you were just plain unsure about, how is this going to roll out? Do you want to revisit that time in 2016?
I think we were, for some reason, we weren't very um, nervous ever about how our music is going to be perceived, or what the future holds. I think because we were so young, maybe we were naive kind of about the whole you know journey as professional musicians. um but we always, from the beginning, I think the only conversation was that we just want to make music and make things that we enjoy making and would enjoy if we were fans, listening to and watching. So that fan experience and putting ourselves in the perspective of the listener or the viewer has always been very important for us. We know that, like, making music for people is what we want to do at the core of it. Because, creatively speaking, both me and Juvraj probably have a lot of other passions and pursuits outside of just Parik and Sing as a project. So if we wanted to just make music for ourselves, we'd probably, you know, take a different avenue or have a different style. But just the idea that we definitely want to connect with people in some sort of tangible way, whether that's through our music videos or whether that's through our performances, and make them happy, but also make them sort of think and expand maybe their perspective and expose, not necessarily expose, but introduce them to ideas that maybe they hadn't, you know, thought of or experienced before, is what we always wanted our MO sort of to be. So yeah, we didn't necessarily have the heebie-jeebies, I guess, about how our album was going to be perceived, or accepted, or what, or things like that, because yeah, like you said, it was so nascent also back in the day in 2015, 16. We were still in the Facebook era, maybe. So we just kind of knew that, if we put out something which is interesting and put out something which we believe in and have worked hard on, it's bound to translate. And we still kind of have that same philosophy. We can't control the uncontrollable. So we just kind of, work on what we can.
Coming to the night is clear, Nishchay. What was the brief that both Jivraj and you exchanged between each other? What was the story, the narrative that you wanted to tell through this album? Because it is an extremely extensive and a very very rich album. I mean, quite clearly, everybody. It's barely been 3 or 4 days since it's hit streaming platforms, and
Hmm.
publications are taking to it at large. You have, I mean, I'm seeing your Instagram stories every day. There is somebody or the other who is giving a shout out, and are really showering so much of love and affection on the album already. And
Yeah.
it personally, like I said, the fact that Parik and Singh is one of my personal favorite acts from the independent music scene today in the country. Clearly, I don't know. I don't want to say that I'm sounding biased or not, but because I do like to be very critical and objective about sometimes
Of
listening to
course.
the kind of
Yeah.
music I do when it comes to my favorite artists. But
Yeah.
the fact that I mean, just so far, I mean, I'm still yet to hear the entire album extensively, but
Yeah.
just the 3 songs that y'all have released so far, whether it is Sleepyhead, Je suis la pomme rouge, and Nightingale. I think
Mm.
in every song, I have just noticed that there is such immense maturity. And maturity, I think, would be too little a word. It's like it shows the evolution of the act, in
Mm.
the evolution of both of you as artists.
Mm.
That's what I could gauge from the songwriting. So when you
Yeah.
have to speak about the entire album at large, do you want to just give us an insight about the process that went into making and writing these beautiful songs?
Sure. Well, first of all, that's very kind of you. I'm glad that you enjoy listening to our music and enjoyed this album in particular. Um, it's the conversation that we had with that I had with Jivraj when we were constructing the album. So what happened was we had a few of the songs already sort of loose, before we knew that it's going to be part of an album, and we wrote more songs to go with them. Um, is that we did want to create a very immersive experience, and we wanted everything to sort of be like hyper detailed almost in terms of the music. Like we wanted to put in like it's like we wanted it to feel like a really slow cooked, very intricate sort of dish, as opposed to something which is like quickly prepared. uh, and it's not necessarily always light and fresh also, the music. I think a lot of our music previously, especially the first album, had this sort of like fresh, very instant quality to it. Like it's like bubbly and effervescent. Like what you get is what it is, like in the first hit or whatever. But for this one, we wanted something which had like almost like too many layers. Like we wanted to like layer things on top of things, and even lyrically, we wanted all of it to be like. I spend a lot of time probably writing the lyrics for each of these songs and editing them and revising them, which is different from my usual process. I'm usually very intuitive, and I like to finish lyrics very fast for anything because I feel like you lose momentum and perspective otherwise. But this time, I actually allowed myself, that time to lose the perspective and make a new one and sort of come back to it. So I think, yeah, time, richness, layers, these are all conversations and ideas that we had, and we wanted the listener to come back to the music. Like we didn't want them to just be satisfied and like just happy with one listen. Well, of course they can be happy with one listen if they don't like it, but if they were into it, we wanted them to be able to discover new things each time they came back. We wanted that opportunity for them to be. We wanted the album to be explorative. We
Yeah.
wanted to be like a book or a story or a really like immersive board game, because these are things that we love interacting with in our own lives, whether they're like long form TV shows or like really like a series of novels, or even like some great board games which are out there like Catan, or things that take hours and hours to finish one round of. Uh, so yeah, we wanted people to have like a real experience with the music, as opposed to something that they could just take it or leave. And that's kind of what we wanted to do, just create something rich and explorative.
I guess that explains it all. I think there was a conscious effort on the part of both of you to unlearn the processes that you had, gained over the past to kind of make this album. I think every song that I have been listening to so far is only a further testament to that. The fact that you all have kind of shed all the internalized conditioning as musicians, and I think you all have just let a sense of newness kind of embrace you, and I think that's what is very reflective in the album so far. Um,
Mm.
Coming to your I think what I could say and what I think all your fans would rightly agree is your USP as an act is the way both of you dress up so similarly. I mean,
Mm.
it's so coordinated. Again, was that a conscious effort to just sort of make that as an identity that when people think Farid and Singh, this is the image that should strike their mind?
Yeah, for sure. Intention, there was an intention there. Also because again, it just comes back to like what we like as fans, and what is just a fun thing. In a lot of the acts that we have come to like over the years have had a strong visual identity. It's not always that just just about dressing similarly necessarily, but having some sort of an identity. Not all the music or musicians that we like have like specific visual identities, but I felt for us as two young guys coming out of Calcutta, and trying to find a good context for our music, uh, and also being fans of the visual craft of filmmaking, of photography, of all of those things. We wanted the project to have a little bit of weight, there. And that's something we thought about in the initial days almost as much as the music, maybe sometimes even more than the music. Um, but yeah, we just wanted like a uniform, something that we could wear that separates our personal lives from our like creative lives or our professional lives, whatever. So we just kind of took it like that, that this is our uniform for our music. Every time we make our music or we present our music, we'll be in this uniform. And it happens to be suits, and the suits are all made by, a really old school type of tailor in Calcutta. So that's like another nod or homage to the city that we came from. But yeah, it's very old fashioned, of course. And I don't know if we'll stick with it forever, but it's nice that we've created something that people can identify us by. So
I think it's a walking testament to that saying that says, one mind dwelling in two bodies. So that's exactly how you guys come across, when you all dress up and appear before us like that. Nishal, just on a personal level, if I may ask, if you
yeah,
would want to shed light on your initial upbringing, how you took to
right.
music, and how did
Mhm.
you feel that your calling lies in
Yeah.
this?
So neither of my parents are musicians. They're not even necessarily creative. They're not creative professionals. My mother had a and probably still has somewhat of a desire to be a writer. She's probably got the ability as well, but my father came from a business background. So uh, they didn't have, there wasn't a clear path. Like I never saw uh, the trajectory of what a professional musician or a professional artist could look like. So it was sort of me figuring a lot of things out for myself in those early years, especially. And what was interesting was that they never like doubted the fact that I could do it somehow, even though they didn't know anybody in their immediate friend circle who was a successful quote unquote professional musician or a musician that's making a life from their art or creativity.
Hmm.
They just somehow had either it was just the belief or they had enough affection, I guess, for me to say that, okay, you can sort of do what uh, you feel like you need to do. There wasn't too much pressure from me from them for me to do something otherwise. They were also, I think, what helped is that they were both and continue to be very big fans of music. They're huge music fans, in terms
Okay.
of listening. And music forms a big part of their lives. Like they unwind to music. That's their biggest probably thrill, whether at the end of the day or even sometimes in the middle of the day. Music is a constant sort of thing for them. My father's a huge fan of ghazals specifically and Indian classical music. So every night would be, like a listening session for him. Even on his own, of course, he'd love to listen with his friends. But even if he's on his own, that's sort of how you'd always soothe himself, with music that he's familiar with. My mother was a huge fan. She grew up when she was very young. She grew up in the States in America,
Yeah.
so she was a huge fan of American music. She told me the story where she forced her father, my grandfather, to buy an LP of Elvis when she was just about 7 or 8 years old, and it was really expensive in those days. Um, so she was always, again, she was a fan. She wanted to be a music fan. She wanted to listen to good music. She introduced me to a lot of the classics from the West, the Beatles, Elvis, Stevie Wonder. Uh, and now she even listens to like even new kind of music, whether it's Charlie Puth or I don't know. She liked that song with Charlie Puth and Megan Trainor. So she's like always listening. Her ears open to like even new music on YouTube and stuff. So I think the fact that they were both fans of music, they appreciated how powerful it can be as an art form. So when I sort of said that I want to try and practice that craft and art form, and I want to be someone who makes music, I think they appreciated it, or at least they recognized, okay, that's the thing, because we've been fans of people that do this, and of course they're fans of musicians that are like wild successes, like worldwide successes. But and they weren't necessarily, obviously there was not a lot of Indian English music that they were listening to, like English music which came out of India, other than maybe Biddu and a few songs here and there. But they were still supportive, and I think that's been a very important factor also, the support that I've received from my parents and just the trust that, uh, that you'd probably figure it out. You'll make it work for yourself somehow. And that's rare. I don't take that for granted. It's not something that everybody from our country or any country actually receives.
I think that's rightly said. Do you think then, Nishchay, in kind of molding you as an artist and more importantly as a musician, do you think somewhere Kolkata as a city played a huge role because there is, um, I mean, I don't know about people being business minded or or being very commercially inclined, but
Mm.
artistically, there is that's a city where it's all that's always been the breeding ground for a lot of artists and poets and musicians in general. There's Rabindra Sangeet all around you, but there's also a huge influence, a huge colonial hangover also,
Yeah.
of the former rulers in the city. So do you think
Yeah.
somewhere the city as a whole played a huge part in kind of molding you as an artist?
I would say so. I think there's a lot of subconscious things that happen depending on which Indian city that an Indian kid probably grows up in. I think Bombay, Delhi, Bangalore, they've all progressed a lot faster and a lot quicker than Calcutta. And I think a lot of the hang-ups of the past of history are kind of lost in those cities in large pockets. I don't know about Delhi, but Bombay and Bangalore for sure. I mean, they're just like cosmopolitan modern cities. They could be any city in any part of Asia, practically. Um, uh, Calcutta definitely was stuck in the past. Like even when I was coming like growing up, like the popular music at like the social clubs, which there was still a club, culture in Calcutta, which in itself is like a very antiquated thing. But even like the bands in school, everyone was trying to cover like, Pink Floyd or Guns N' Roses or music which is like 15, 20 years old already. Everyone was kind of like stuck in the past. And I think that the thing that you said about it being like tied to history is was definitely there subconsciously and nobody actually knew any better. So by that logic, a lot of fans, especially music fans from my city, are still probably huge fans of music from the 60s and 70s in the US or the UK. I don't know if that's necessarily the case for young people in cities like Bombay or Bangalore or Pune or Delhi for that matter. So that was definitely, a factor, I guess. It was around me. For a long time, I kind of was like also frustrated by it, in a sense. I was like, why aren't people listening to music which is current and new? Like, why aren't people giving that a chance? But I kind of accepted it that, it has a lot to do with tradition. It has a lot to do with the music that your parents were listening to. You ended up listening to that music invariably sometimes. Because, I mean, these were in the days before we had Spotify and Apple Music and YouTube. Maybe it's changed now. I guess younger kids now in Calcutta have the choice. They can choose whether I want to like be a fan of vintage music or do I want to listen to what's current. Um, so that was a factor. The other factor is that Calcutta is just a very slow city, so it allows a lot of time for you to like process your creativity. If you're really interested in working on a project, let's say if it's like writing a novel or trying to write a film or like in the initial sort of creative stages where you just need to create with yourself. I think Calcutta is probably the best city in India for that because living is cheap, life is slow, um, and it's totally out of the sync in terms of trends and expectations in terms of social norms, and there isn't uh, that culture of too much aspiration in Calcutta, I feel. Uh, so when there's not enough so much aspiration, I guess there is a chance for you to actually be creative, where you don't necessarily have to think about what is the output or what is the final result of all my effort and hard work. So you'll find like really like well established creative practitioners of music, of art, who may not even be that commercially successful or famous, but they're very serious about their craft and their art form, and they live in Calcutta, and it's like that's the only safe space for them to exist, and I'm glad that it is a place. Of course, it's changing a lot now. Calcutta is becoming a lot more like other cities, I think, in India. But it's still, it's still got a slightly different vibe.
Well, coming to the night is clear. I I think the part of all the conditioning from your city kind of even reflects into the album because, like you rightly said, when we are talking about Delhi and Mumbai and Bangalore, the rate of progression is so fast. Sometimes it also reflects in the way artists kind of you know maintain their songwriting process or their song making process. I
Yeah.
think a large part of that traditional way of making music also reflects in the way your compositions, roll out over 3 minutes, 4 minutes. I'm talking only about The Night is Clear right now because I think the
Yeah.
shortest song is
Yeah.
just a little short of 3 minutes on the album. And
Yeah.
we are living now in a day and age where suddenly the 1 minute music has kind of taken over. So,
Yeah.
how open are you to embracing change when it comes to the music consumption patterns? Are you somebody who is okay, like are you someone who is receptive towards trends, or do you think there's a sense of aversion to it?
I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that there's a sense of aversion,
Yeah.
but it's not something that we actively are too,
I mean,
entangled with.
where I was trying to get at was I think there's a certain sense that you don't feel the necessity to really
Yeah.
conform to it.
Yeah, that I think is accurate.
Yeah.
We don't feel a necessity of having to fit into a mold. That being said, of course, our manager in India and our label has it's like a reality. Like 1 minute reels and TikTok and all of those things are a reality. So we'd be silly to say that we're not gonna like interact with it at all. In a sense, for us it's just another medium. It's fine. It's a vertical video. It needs to be 1 minute. So like you said, our music is 3 minutes. So we'll just have to like edit the first verse and chorus out, and it works. But we wouldn't necessarily make music to fit that format. Our music can be edited and it can be presented to fit the medium. Like, I don't feel the medium should dictate the art form. It should be the other way around. So that's kind of how where we're coming at it from. Yeah.
Well, coming to one of my personal favorite questions, Nishay, since I really like to actively propagate the feeling of community within the independent music space,
Hmm.
collaborations are a way forward today. So much of the best work is coming out from the independent music space because artists are taking that conscious effort to collaborate with each other, to
Yeah.
really learn from one another,
Right.
while making music in the
Hmm.
process. So, if I may ask, and if you may speak on, as part of Parik and Singh, and not just personally.
Yeah.
Who are some of the artists from the Indian music space currently that the act enjoys listening to at leisure when you're unwinding?
Oh, there's so many actually. There's I really like Disco Puppet. He's actually a friend of mine. He was my childhood friend from Calcutta. He lives in Bangalore now. So I love his creativity, his approach. Also, again, he's got that non-conformity, to like any of the trends or any of the things that are expected of electronic music producer, quote unquote. I really think Malvika Manoj is a really good songwriter. She's got a clear sense of what she wants to say as an artist. Really like Tarana Komoribi as well. Um, and in terms of bands, I think the I always have fun, watching what the F16s are up to, because I think that they're also having a lot of fun doing what they do, and I think that's what they're trying to propagate, which is great. We need, acts like that in any music scene, that are just, full of positivity and are, just trying to make people feel good, which is great. Um, I Yeah, and Dhruv Vishwanath also. I'm a fan of his work for sure. So yeah, I definitely keep I would say probably more than Jivraj. I definitely keep an eye on what's happening in India as a community of artists, and even Gauri and Aksha, great singers, great musicians. Love their new song with Chirag Todi that just came out. I think it's really magical and beautiful. So yeah.
Lastly, Nishchay, before we conclude this interview, would you like to just give us a brief, snapshot of the grand plans of the duo at large?
Yes, so this year we're definitely gonna do a tour of India, and that'll probably be as soon as October, November. We take the, take our show to as many cities as we can. Um, play the music in a room full of people that are in our new album in its entirety. I think that's something that we want to do for this record. Um, and yeah, we I think this next phase of the next 3-4 months will be about based around performance and live shows and sort of promoting our music to new fans, hopefully. And we never really stop writing, so I think we'll also start working on the next thing as early as February, March. We might take we've been talking about taking a different approach or a different process to making an album, so we might experiment with that in February. But yeah, so shows and more music is what's on the cards for now.
Well, all I can say is, as and when the dates for, the Mumbai city is announced, I don't think so. Any of us can keep calm. Thank you so much, Nishchay, for talking to me today. It's been such a pleasure chatting with you this afternoon, and I wish you and Jivraj all the very best in all the wonderful music that you're going to bring our way.
Thank you so much. I enjoyed it.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.